Hey everybody, welcome to Weekend Project. I'm Laura Lynn of the Mama Pop Quilt Shop, and we're very happy to see you here today. Today we're turning Orphan blocks into some placemats and a table runner for our new table and chairs. We've made placemats for Christmas, and I have some Easter ones, but I don't have some for just every day. And since it's the first time we've actually had a table and chairs for about 7 years, so we're super excited. So we've been eating at it for over a week now, and we need some placemats for sure. So I came across these Orphan blocks that I had in my collection. I didn't want to make anything new. It's figure out what I have and what can I utilize in my stash. I have some extra batting. I got some blue for some backing, and it should match the one behind me with the little green trees that we did on the weekend before. And yeah, it should be fun and exciting to put together, that's for sure. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make one more regular placemat just like this one right here. I've done 2 so far to match, and it's just the regular blue on the back. And then we've got, I think it's 5 or 6 pieces of the blocks together to make a row, and that'll be the table runner. Okay, so super easy. What we want to do here is to be able to sew our blocks together into a fashion. Now this is a rail fence block here, okay? A nice big one. It ends up being about 9 1/4 by 9 1/4 when squared up. And then I just flipped and flopped them like I did on the table runner, or in the placemat. And then just on the placemat, I added a little strip on either side. I cut one of the blocks in half and then put it that way, all right? So what we need to do is sew these little bits together. Okay, so let's take this out from under here and let's get our squares all sewn together. Okay, so I just put a pin. There's no really seams to match up because you are flipping and flopping on the rail fence block, but I mean, let's take any Orphan block that you have. Maybe you might need to add a little background to it to make it big enough for a placemat or even for a table runner or a table topper. But definitely don't leave them hanging out in a box. You got to do something with them. And there really wasn't quite enough of them to build a quilt out or even a baby quilt. So it was either just like a big table topper or mix it into something else. So make a couple placemats for what we need for the house for every day. We'll just sew them together. I already have them pinned, so it would be less time. Okay. Just have to make sure they're getting lined up from the edge to the edge. The block is sitting within its in its space. Okay. We all have Orphan blocks. Try to block, maybe say we didn't like it, or we made too many and decided to maybe shorten the quilt instead, so you got a few blocks left over. Those are definitely handy to start a new little easy and to get through in a weekend project. It is a chilly day here today. I think it's minus 25 Celsius, which that's approximately what, minus 13 or 14 in Fahrenheit. So definitely a crisp, sunny day, but definitely chilly. Okay, just flipping this around. I may have to unpin this one because I don't think I pinned it up correctly. No, I didn't. Okay, I think that might be my row together. I think it is. So now we're going to give this a press to get those little seams nice and straight. Then we're going to lay it up on the batting and then do a few pins and then do some stitching down to keep it all steady, okay? Give it some walking foot quilting. Okay. So, here, let's move this way. There we go. Okay. Just want to get those seams nice and flat. And now the simplest way to quilt it would be just to follow the seams and just kind of go stitch beside the ditch or stitch in the ditch or stitch around the ditch, or even a nice little zigzag would be pretty enough. Don't have to do a tight one. You can do a nice loose one or use one of your other decorative stitches on your machine. Okay, so let's move this back over here. Let's lay our backing out. I've already pressed it and I've got my batting. You want to make sure your batting and your backing are bigger than your blocks itself, okay? Now you want to lay your project out. Try and get it as even as possible. Sometimes if you have maybe a printed backing, you don't want it to, like, on an angle or anything like that. You kind of want to make it as straight as possible. Okay, so there we go. From there, and then we'll just hand smooth. Let's move that out of the way. Hand smooth our way to the other end. Oh, did I add one extra? Oh, I added one extra. Whoops. Oops, oops, oops. Did I have two extra? How did I get some wrong on that one? Hold on. Is that one actually going to reach it? Oh, barely. All right, let's take this one out. My mistake. Seam ripper. Seam ripper, seam ripper, you're my best friend. Seam ripper, right to the very end. So this one block too long. I guess you can make your table runner a little bit longer if you wanted to with your backing fabric. That's okay. This will be just another block. Somewhere else. So it's a little hot pad or something. All right, here we go. Let's smooth this back out here. Okay, all right, move that one off to the side. Okay. Now what you want to do is just go and stitch down in between the lines, okay? Which I pretty much have started over on this one. So let's finish that one up, okay? And then we'll trim it up and then add our binding, okay? Let's go here, underneath the machine. And then I just did straight ones. I didn't go across in the other direction. I just came down and tried to line it up with the seams that were here. Walking foot is fantastic for this. You could also free motion quilt them. It's a great way to practice free motion quilting. Just make some placemats for your house or some table runners or table toppers. You don't want to throw those beginning pieces away. Those are memories, and that just shows you how far you've come when you get to the end. Okay. And then straight down again on the outside here, just to make sure we're staying nice and straight. And then we'll square it up and then attach the binding. Orphan blocks and placemats and table runners. Okay, so now we take this, put it to the table. Goes over there. Let's give it a trim. Okay. Side first. All the way. And I use my ruler by trying to make sure it's the seam that or the place that I just cut. Sorry, my bad. The place that I just cut is nice and even, like on a flat edge, and then I'm going to line it up and scoot it up this way. And I'm like, okay, well, there we go, nice and even. Up. Okay, and then turn it around. Make sure we're nice and angled on one of the corners. We're following some straight lines. And again, trying to put a nice flat line at the bottom to keep things nice and straight. Using my cutting mat as well as my ruler to keep us on the straight and narrow. Okay, now these will go to the scrap pile. Put that there. And then for the binding, it's just super easy. I'm going to machine onto the back and then machine onto the front. So you just take your binding and you want to you're going to have to overlap them, especially if you want that angled cut. Okay, so you want to overlap them, but you don't want to start right away. You want to start like about down here. You want to give it a good 5 inches or 6 inches before you start. And then same when you end, you just want to come right around the corner and pretty much stop because you want to flip those ends together to seal them up. Okay, so we're going to stitch here, and then we're going to come down to the edge here about a 1/4 inch away. And we're going to stop, and then we're going to pivot our binding right up here, like just twist it. So it comes up, you're laying it flat, you've got a nice little fold at the corner here. It's just like a triangle piece. And then you sew right down again to the other part down here. Same again, 1/4 inch, and do the same way, and that's how you get yourself all the way around. Okay, so let's start that. I tend to use like a bit of a bigger stitch, like about 3 or 3.0 when it comes to doing binding, because I don't think it needs to be at 2.40. So. Walking foot is amazing for this part as well. Okay, stop a 1/4 inch away, cut your threads, twist it towards you, take your extra binding right over here, and you're going to flip it up. Give yourself that little triangle in the corner. Line it up with the side of your project. Start about a 1/4 inch away and then just come on down. Try and keep it consistent of where you're stitching. And again, stopping about a 1/4 inch away. Taking the binding towards you, pulling it up, making sure it sits nicely in that corner. Because then when it flips to the front, you just have to go stitching all the way around. No problem. And please sew at your own pace. If you're a little bit slower or a little bit faster, just make sure you're sewing at your pace that you're comfortable with, okay? A couple more corners to go here. Just 2 more. Again, we're flipping that this direction. Sorry, try and get that nice and clear for you. And I just make up a bunch. If I know I'm doing a big project with the same binding, I'll make sure that there's enough for the placemats and the table runners, and then anything left over goes into 2.5 inch strip bin, and can be either used for scraps or for smaller projects. Okay, so now I just kind of came in just a little bit. You want to make sure you're leaving 2 longer tails to do your binding, okay, to finish off your binding. Now we're going to go back to the table. And I found the best ways to do is you take a little strip. Usually it's of the salvage part of your binding, and that's 2.5 inches from this spot to this spot here. Now when you go and you lay your binding out, you want to make sure you're overlapping that 2.5 inches. So I'm putting this one like right beside it. See, you can see that right there, right beside it. Now I'm going to take this one that we just ended off with, and I'm going to lay it right across my binding, nice and flat, And then I'm going to trim right in line with this one, but only the top one. We're going to leave this bottom one just flat, just the way it is, okay? So we only want to trim the front one, the top one, okay? So now we take that away, and you can see how this overlaps by that much, okay? Now what we want to do is we want to take this one and lay it flat. Take this one and lay it flat right on top of each other, but crossing it. And then we're going to sew right down the diagonal from corner to corner. I do like to put 2 pins in. I like to put one right at that corner and then right down here for the support. Just because sometimes I end up sewing a little bit more on my bindings, and like it's pulling it right there. So let's go and sew from this corner right down to this corner. Okay. Take our little binding. Oops. Okay. Might have to grab another black piece for the table runner. All right, now we're going to go under here, and we're just going to sew from corner to corner. Let's usually take a couple of start stitches, and then I kind of visually with my finger and press and hold where the corner is, and I aim for that thread and that needle to come right towards my finger. There we go. And I'm always out for an extra half square triangle, even though it may be super duper tiny when we get done with it, but that's okay. And we just trim that extra half square triangle off and put it in our bucket. Okay, there we go. Now this lays flat, as you can tell. As soon as you tug the corners, it lays nice and flat, and it should be the bottom side is under there as well, up next to the edge, and then you just sew on down. Overlap your stitches a little bit. All right, now we flip to the front and finish it off. Okay. Now you can start pretty much anywhere around, just as long as you end up back where you're going. So now this is another a perfect opportunity to use some of those fancy stitches you have on your machine. Take the time. They usually take much longer to stitch around than just a straight stitch. Even a zigzag is time consuming, so be patient. If you're in for it, then you're in for it. But just know that it does take time, and try not to feed the fabric through. Let it do its little chunk, 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 come back and forth, and chunk, 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 and come back and forth. Just let it do its thing. You can help guide it, just don't force it, or you end up with some weird patterns. What you thought was being like a flower and a leaf turns out to be some, you know, weird critter. Okay, a couple points in and then turn. Always pivot with the needle down. Oops, got a little hairy under there. Oopsies. Popped out. Let's reset that back up. There we go. I think it's just a placemat. Right, and then when you come to here, the corners, you just go straight down, and you're going to end up with a little point, and then you just fold that right back up, and you should have a nice little angle for your binding. So I always make sure you go all the way straight down, make sure I got at least one stitch in that other corner before returning. Okay. Again, pulling it straight down, folding it back up. Couple holes or stitches in, pivot. No time at all, you got something super special that you've reused in your shop or your space, and now you've made a fantastic little placemat. There we go. Now we've got 3 of them, one for Pop, Munchkin, and me. And then we'll have a table runner as soon as I finish it off. So the same principle, I'll come in and I'll try and just stitch down on these lines here, and then trim it up and then put my binding on, and that'll be done. If you have any questions, just please leave them below. Hopefully you go and rescue some of your orphan blocks that you may have, or rescue some that maybe your friend has and they just don't know what to do with. You can recycle them into something else. Make them into a pillow. Put them on point if you can put them on point, if they're a special block. Make a wall hanging. Do something with it. Just don't let it sit in a box. Okay. So big hugs to you. Thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern for our live streams. Okay, take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.